strategic design, digital transformation, customer experience strategy, and the use of visualized applied to the development of innovative products, processes, and services. Professor Kori specialized in the formation of design and innovation programs, overseeing execution teams working in a global center of excellence that creates breakthrough business solutions and technology. He has won international design awards, including being named one of the 100 most influential designer of the decade by the American Institute of Graphic Art. Currently, he is holding visiting professor of practice at Kotak School of Sustainability. Professor Kori.
Thank you so much. Thank you for taking time. Really looking forward to this discussion. I see we have a full room, but it's okay. We have actually more questions and more direct conversations here. It's actually an honor to get to spend some time with you. So what we're going to talk about today is really in two parts. The first part of the case study is the emphasis story. It's a very good case study that shows how to take an organization and an entire campus and be able to get to a net neutrality moment, and I'll talk you through the story. Take about 40-45 minutes. There's time for questions. We'll see if the videos work, because there's some pretty interesting points there. The second part of the discussion is actually really interesting, so hopefully you can stay for it. It's about an hour, but this is kind of the secret sauces, I would say. What were the things, how does it operate? It's a little bit more on the science side of thinking about things. So with that said, I'd like to start with a question. Can somebody tell me what double materiality means? Double materiality? Okay, so it's the concept of this. Think of something that has two dimensions. In one axis, what is financially the right thing to do for a company or an organization? So think of that in one axis. And on the other axis, what is the right thing to do for the community and sustainability? And that is really the secret for any successful program to transform. So say we want to take this entire campus and we want to make it net neutral or net positive carbon, we would have to solve for those two pieces. And it's not an easy thing to do, as you'll see. And this first part of the story is actually achieving this at a very large global scale. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. So I'm also associated with MIT University. I'm on the Global Technology Board. I do a lot of hackathons and workathons, and also with Berkeley University, where I do a lot with energy and building sciences. So some of the aspects in the second part, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the things that we're doing here. I'm going to start this conversation. It should flow well, but at any time, since we're an intimate group here, just raise your hand and we can talk and have a question here. So let's get started, okay? So, everybody here know about emphasis? Everybody wants to work with emphasis? Everybody know what it is? Emphasis is one of the great companies in India, one of the true first IT companies that started here. Without spending a lot of time, the journey began in 1981. It started with 7 people, $250. They were going to be a telecommunications company. They had, without spending a lot of time on this, it ended up being $18 billion. As of today, it's actually a little bit higher than that. This is, statistics are a little bit old, about 2 years old. There are 84 offices around the world. There is 50 countries presence that is taking place, and over 320,000 employees now through here. So this idea of a large company that is net neutral, this is where we started at, that we have to tackle. So why does Infosys or another type of company determined that it's good to be sustainable, it's good to be resilient, it's good to invest the huge amount of capital and energy and resources in order to achieve this. Once again, going back to this double materiality concept, the company has to make money, right? It has responsibility to the shareholders and to everybody in that regards to be a successful business. But why would you also choose to worry about the climate or the communities through here? And the answer is kind of very, very interesting, and we'll talk a bit about this towards the end. And we'll talk about some shifting things. But at the first level, some ideas. In 2008, we hit a critical point. The company has kind of hit this level where there is a certain amount of employees. It's nowhere near the 300,000. It's about 25,000 employees at that point. But they realized there's a surge of IT services needed around the globe. Emphasis is primed to really take the lead, which they did, to do this. So they had to say, we need to build a lot of buildings. We need to create the right kind of environments for workforces to be productive and really create the ultimate type of company that would do very well in India and globally. So they also realized that if we were going to go down this path, we would need to do what's right for the community and for the environment, because we're going to spend the money anyway. And more importantly, in order for a business to succeed, it needs two things: water and energy, which is not a given thing. So how do you start thinking about the assets, the buildings, and what you have, and also the changes that you're going to make along that journey and that path? So we looked at three things to start out with. What was the energy efficiency that currently existed, and set a goal? So the consumption of energy that was happening, we said by 2008, we knew what that baseline was, and that we made a commitment that by 2018, 10 years later, we had a 10-year plan, we would cut that, we would increase our efficiency by 50%. We set a high aspirational goal. We said, this is what we're targeting. The second part was how to start using renewable energies. Once again, this is 2008, so a lot of new things are happening. Solar really wasn't out prolific at this point. Certainly no hydrogen, certainly other areas. So we work with what we have, but we make a commitment that 100% of what we can do is use renewables by the same date of 2018. Because we figure we're a technology company, and there'll be other things that will happen around the world. We'll figure out how to do this. And then the third was saying, how will we deal with carbon offsets? So does anybody know what a carbon offset is? Okay, carbon offset is this. Everything produces carbon. No matter how hard you try and how efficient you get and all the things you do, we still will produce carbon. So there's always this leftover amount that you can't handle what you've done either business-wise or technology-wise. So there are mechanisms in place, planting trees, perhaps doing CSR programs, buying carbon credits, allows you to fill that gap, and it helps you achieve your carbon goals. So we'll go deeper into this. So all of this becomes, in 2016, a carbon neutrality goal. It says this is the goals that we're going to achieve, and what we say that by 2020, which would be our 10-year mark for us at this point, how to make operations more energy efficient, how to make green, environmentally responsible choices, and also how to quantify the carbon impact. We were just discussing, how do you see carbon? How do you know the impact? So how do you quantify? How do you humanize that? How do you measure it? And that's why you hear a lot about indexes and so forth. So this is the challenge that we're taking on here. The pathway of design is this. So my background's in physics and in systems design, so there always has to be some kind of logical pattern of doing things that can be measured and proven. So you come up with your plan. We'll go deeper into that. But you cannot ignore the business. So the second part is you have that growth plan. Not growth plan for sustainability, but growth plan for your business. They have to work in sync with each other. You have to account for your digital and your physical assets. So physical assets are the buildings, it's your cars, it's your air conditioners, it's all of these things. Your digital assets are your computing power. It's your phone systems, it's your apps. They all have carbon footprints. And it's a big challenge right now as we look at AI because it even puts even more stress on digital assets. There's a supply chain. So the concept of a supply chain is every vendor, everybody that you connect with in order to perform your duties in your business coming across here. And we'll actually talk about that in the level 3 scopes in a minute to understand the difference there. And when you figure what this all is, you have to have your offset strategy. You have to say, I can do this much, I can come this far, but there's still a gap to fill. So what's going to be my strategy to fill that gap? And ultimately, all things will not work unless you actually have a sustainability first culture. 3 questions you always have to answer. Will it technically work? Will the business be able to survive? And will anybody use what you've created? Will they adopt it? And if you can't answer those 3 questions, you're not going to be successful. So this is the story across here. We're going to make the presentation available to you. There's a little bit other dates here, the steps you took, but it's not important for the flow here. Won't spend too much time on this either, but just to give you some magnitude of scope of what we're talking about. So in 2020, Emphasis achieved carbon neutrality. Pretty amazing, because how many of us heard what the Paris Accord goals are? 2050. So when I became the sustainability officer there, and we took these goals on, I always ask others saying, if we could achieve this in 10 years, why is it everybody else, it's 2050? Now it's not apples to apples, as we would say. Some companies are more digital, some companies have more construction assets, so it's a little bit different what you do. But the majority of companies can do a lot better, a lot faster than what they're claiming they can do, if they understand their business and across there. But what we were able to achieve, 100% carbon footprint, we erased it. We had a 55% reduction of our electricity, our target was 50, we hit 55%, that we're not doing any energy footprint. We took 45% of our energy is now from green sources, so that was our goal also. Electricity waste diversion from landfills. 91% of our waste never ends up in a landfill in 2020. And we've digitized everything, all of our operations, 100%, which is really key coming across here. Just to give you an idea of scope, 51 million square feet is what we're dealing with, of buildings and properties around the world. Some of it is contained where you can control everything in this environment, and sometimes you're in other countries and other buildings and you just have a small piece of this. We took 40,000 connected assets across all of these geographies around the world, and there are 500,000 data points that are looked at continuously in real time to measure what's going on here. That's the digitization side. Are we familiar with scope emissions? Scopes 1, 2, and 3? Does anybody know what those concepts are? Okay, this is important. Scope 1 emissions is anything, oh, did you know? I saw a hand go, yeah? It's got a hand go up there. Okay, it's easy to know. Scope 1, it's what's happening in this building. It's the energy, it's whatever coming through here. Scope 2 is anything that you might bring into the building. So it could be a delivery truck or that's bringing your fuel. It could be electricity that's coming in from an outside source. It's things that you have to bring into your environment. Those are scope 2. Scope 3 is the most complicated one. Scope 3 is your supply chain. So for a business, that would be if I'm producing these chairs, if I'm having food delivered, or if I'm delivering a service, I have to account for that carbon footprint too, across the board. And it's very hard to have complex supply chains and also understand their carbon footprint, and maybe they're not carbon neutral, they probably aren't. But you have to account for their carbon also as part of your calculations. And this is the biggest challenge that it has. So to achieve carbon neutrality, you have to hit all 3 points. Lots of awards for doing this work, but probably the most important statistic that I look at is this. From the time that we started this idea of going carbon neutral, in 2008, we had a certain amount of employees. By 2020, we had grown by 160%. So we had a huge amount of buildings, a huge amount of employees, but our entire energy signature went up by 20%. So we used technology, so we suddenly could grow without adding more electricity. We could suddenly really just continually lower our carbon footprint. So I'm going to show you how we've done this. 3 answers to this question here. I'm going to jump a little bit back and forth because I actually have some videos, because they look a little commercially, because put them on YouTube and it was to talk about the great work that we were doing at the time. But they really tell the story of the people who did it, and I think it's important to see and relate that. So the first part we talked about was energy efficiency. It's a baseline. What are you currently doing, and what can you do first to make it as efficient as possible? Through engineering, through behavioral patterns, technology, other areas. So let's see if the video works here. This video is about 2 minutes, 3 minutes long. Be patient with it, we'll see how it goes.
Over a period of more than 3 decades, Infosys has built itself as one of India's largest IT firms with a global footprint. As the company has grown and prospered, so has its commitment to sustainability. Today, 15 of its buildings, representing 5.6 million square feet of real estate, are certified LEED Platinum. Though that makes the company #1 in India for LEED certified space, Infosys is already pursuing certification for 13 additional buildings.
We have taken this LEED journey since 2008. What we decided was we will not put additional constraints on these resources, but we will reduce the consumption of these resources.
On its facilities, rooftop solar panels collect energy for widespread applications. A custom radiant panel-based cooling system has proven to be 30% more efficient than conventional HVAC systems. Building envelopes are fully insulated to maintain desired temperatures. Glazed windows avoid direct heat gain while permitting natural light to permeate. The result: from 2008 to the present, Infosys cut its electricity bills by $125 million and negated almost 1 million tons of carbon emissions.
The manpower has gone up by 124% compared to 2008. The infrastructure has gone up by 200%, but our absolute power consumption has gone up only by 18%.
Water is also monitored and conserved by low-flow fixtures, sensor-based irrigation, and rainwater harvest. Wastewater is treated on site, then diverted for horticulture. Solid waste is segregated at source and turned into biogas or to manure through an organic waste converter. Ambient air is filtered through a vast expanse of campus greenery, and man-made lakes are interconnected to effectively manage water flow and avoid flooding.
We have more than 2 lakh people working for us. $9 billion company, Infosys. If we can do a 2% increase in the bottom line due to good ambient air quality, daylighting, good designs, that's welcome. We are not incurring any additional cost.
One example of the data-driven approach is an app that allows Infosys employees to send requests for room temperature adjustments. A central command center at the Mysore campus makes Infosys the first IT company in India to manage 100% of its campus operations from one source.
LEED is a world-renowned benchmark for that, and we have proven that whatever design we have done, LEED has certified it to be a platinum rated. So this is giving us a very big brand.
Learn more on LEED and GDCR, the exclusive certifying body.
Did you recognize one of your alumni in there? That was Murthy. So he was one of the founders of the company. He went to this school. So, That was an older video that was taken, recorded probably about 2018. It's where the statistics were a little bit different, but you can see on the path of where we were achieving. And that campus didn't exist before. That was one of those opportunities to create across there. So we deployed IoT and IT components. We optimized efficiency through automation. And we retrofitted existing buildings. That was that first stage. The second stage was about the renewable energy story. So how do you reduce the electricity intensity? How do you increase and optimize, in this case, solar power? You'll see this in this next video of what we've done here. How do you phase out the carbon dioxide emissions? And how do you procure renewable energy? We'll talk a little bit more about that in the gap here. So let's take a look at the second video.
Sustainability and economic viability. They say it's hard to balance. But what if your footprint is global? For Infosys, finding the balance was not an option. It was a business imperative. The only way ahead was to generate the power we consume. The road to tomorrow led us to the sun and to Sierra in rural Karnataka, India. A land that was barren, yet the most abundant in sunlight in the region. Here, our strategy for renewable energy at scale would become a reality. A grid as expansive as our vision, built to follow the sun. Connected to be as efficient as possible, all with the intelligence of a live enterprise, where data feeds a smarter network, where it senses inefficiencies and puts new efficiencies to work, creating a cleaner, greener Infosys, setting change in motion wherever we are, changing lives around us and bringing us one step closer to harnessing nature for all our needs. This reinvention has been recognized for making change real. But the journey doesn't stop. What we have begun, we now take to the world to help every live enterprise become a sustainable one, to navigate our next for a brighter tomorrow.
So that's that second part that I was talking about. This idea of where are we going to create renewable energies? So we didn't do this alone, but we did a lot of the engineering. We had the capabilities. Infosys has about 17,000 engineers within that subset of 300,000 folks, and we have all the software engineers. But we partnered with the government, we partnered with BP and others, but we did create and design that entire field through there, and we've made certainly more through here. And the one part that wasn't called out is you still can only get so much power, out of these kinds of mechanisms. So this idea of procuring renewable energy. So what Infosys could do, let's say we have extra energy on our systems, we can sell that to other companies, and it's considered carbon-free energy. So they're called purchase power agreements that another company that may not have those capabilities would be able to use that energy and say that their carbon reduction is also happening. So there's all of these agreements and arrangements that are happening around the world, which are called PPAs, purchase power agreements, and they have to be certified that they're not producing carbon. So this is solar, certainly the advance of nuclear can do this, hydrogen as this evolves, biogas, all of these areas also qualify along with some others. And if you have excess, you can actually get credits coming across here and purchase through there. So we share those. And where that becomes very important is when you're at an Infosys campus, you have control. But if you're in the city of Amsterdam and you have an emphasis office, you can't put a solar field in the middle of Amsterdam. You're probably going to find someone in Amsterdam who has a smart grid, who has one of these systems, and you're going to purchase from there in order to go there. So part of the science is not just the engineering, but it's also the procurement process. And this goes back to that scope 3 idea of what is your value chain to achieve things. The third area to talk about is the carbon offsets. So there's always that gap. Nothing can be carbon free. So there's generally 3 ways that companies look at doing this, organizations, schools look at this too. I can purchase it from somebody else. An example would be this. I'll ask the question, I don't think I know the answer. So for Tesla, everybody knows who Tesla is. How much of their profits, percentage-wise, come from selling automobiles when they do their profits? Does anybody know? Has that been in any of your class discussions? It's 20%. All of their revenues for their cars is 20%. 80% of Tesla's value is selling carbon credits to other companies because they have a very high rating of how they produce their cars, and every car runs on renewable energy and so forth. So it's more valuable that they actually produce carbon credits than they actually produce automobiles. So it's a very interesting concept. So other companies see this too. The second area to do it is there are carbon markets you can trade. So it's almost like the stock market. And they constantly change price where they're available and they come across. And the third way to do it is through a CSR, or corporate social responsibility program, which says you have provable activities that you are lowering the carbon of the region around you and you're improving other aspects that are accountable when we look at ESG, environment, social, and governance. And emphasis looked at it 2 ways, and they said, we are first going to do as much CSR as possible. It's the right thing to do for the communities, but there's also a financial aspect. I said that when you purchase carbon credits or trade carbon credits, it's like the stock market. Your carbon credit might cost you 14 rupees, or it could cost you a pro. It depends on what day is happening and how many people are trading for them. So if you're a financial planner of an organization, how do you constantly adjust every day your budget if your carbon credits are always changing price on you and you can't predict what's happening? When you have a CSR project, you say there's a budget, it will have this many achievements, we can count on it, we do it right, and therefore it's predictable. So when we achieved our carbon neutrality, we said 100% CSR programs. And if we can't do that, then we'll look at carbon trading. We've never had to move in that direction. So this is the third video. This was a little bit longer, but it's truly, I think, a great example of how this actually works in reality. Oops.
Climate change is dramatically altering the nature of our planet. Rising sea levels, unpredictable weather patterns, and a rise in extreme weather events has left us in a state of emergency. Emissions from fossil fuels have accelerated climate change. Researchers have shown that the annual global carbon emissions are around 36 gigatons. Last year, Infosys emitted nearly 300,000 tons of carbon dioxide. We wanted to neutralize this.
Our strategy is very clear. We want to do this carbon neutrality program with the underlying objective of having a maximum social impact, coupled with the required carbon offset points.
Our research showed that the traditional cooking practices in India provided an opportunity for significant reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. India is home to over a billion people. More than 60% of them still use firewood for cooking. People have to walk long distances to collect firewood, from within forests. This is not only time-consuming, but also harms the environment. The traditional cookstoves they use are also highly inefficient. Women and children have to endure long hours in the kitchen, constantly exposed to smoke and soot, which is estimated to cause premature death in more than 1 million Indians. On the other hand, India has more than 500 million cattle, that is 30% of the world's population. Methane emitted from cattle dung is 25 times more damaging as a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. By reducing firewood use and better utilization of cattle dung, we could bring down greenhouse gas emissions. We decided to address both these problems through our carbon offset program. In places that have cattle and access to water, we set up biogas units. The dung fed in the biogas units generated methane gas, which could be utilized as a clean cooking fuel. On the other hand, the digested waste from the unit turned into rich organic manure. In places that were not suitable for setting up biogas units, we provided improved cook stoves. These are twice as efficient as the traditional cook stoves, cutting down firewood use by nearly half. Through these interventions, the lives of the women changed dramatically. Because there was no smoke from the improved stoves and biogas units, their health began to improve. With less time spent in cooking and firewood collection, women could pursue other vocations. Our program has reached out to more than 100,000 families, positively affecting issues such as health, education, pollution, forest cover, and women empowerment. In the process, we will manage to offset 1.2 million tons of carbon dioxide. To us, what started as an endeavor to offset our carbon emissions has turned into a journey of fulfillment and hope. We are now well on track to becoming carbon neutral by March 2020.
So these are the 3 steps here. Now, I didn't just bring the videos to say I wouldn't have to speak. One other key lesson is you need to document what you're doing. You need to be able to tell these stories in order to have people understand what is happening from the people who have done this. I think this last story is super powerful, right? When you think about generational change of habit, it's engineered though. As I said, I'm a systems designer. We actually looked at saying what would be the implications because we also wanted to make sure if we were to change how people cooked, what would be the implications of that? Sometimes you have to predict, is it a good thing or a bad thing? And one of the key aspects that we said, if we install a program like this, we're not always going to be there to create cooking utensils. We're not going to be there to be able to engineer the biogas thing. So we said, what simple technologies can be done locally, not just to create the jobs. So how to safely collect, we trained how to do that with Don. How to engineer the right kind of cooking vessel for methane, that then we made sure local craftsmen could create it. And it became industries for them. The thing that I'm most proud of for what my team did was the change of collecting firewood for girls. They were getting at 4 o'clock in the morning, and they no longer have to do this. So we talked about affecting 100,000 families. 60,000 girls now go to school versus collecting firewood. That's just within 3 years of when the program was thing. That is generational change. So when we talk about a green economy, it's just not the carbon reduction component, which we all need. It is actually changing for the better what's happening if we do this right. Okay? So, we're going to keep this moving on to the second part of the question. Yeah?
You earlier mentioned about the buying and purchasing of carbon credits.
Mm-hmm.
So, if a country which is already carbon neutral, it has carbon credits. So, a country which is not able to meet the carbon goals, it might buy from the country which has already been carbon neutral. So the country that is buying, it has the ability that it can go on polluting, but buy the carbon credits.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think it's okay, but you are absolutely right. So there's terms for that. Whether
It will
it's,
be carbon neutral in paper, but in reality.
exactly, that's another negative point about that. But not everything is clearly cut, right? So India is about to launch one of the most aggressive CSR carbon credit programs that the world has seen, right? This is happening right now. So India has great potential where other countries don't. And it's a great economic boost. And what it should hopefully happen is India will continue to develop ways of producing excess, ways of capturing carbon in other areas. So that is just the way it works, but you're exactly right. And it's a very unaccountable, unmeasurable thing. And yes, I'm a believer that carbon credits are not the solution because it kind of hides the problem. But we have to figure it out. I'll show you another piece about that across here. I'm not going to drain this slide here, but I would like you to understand that the reason I've come to this campus is to say, how does this campus become carbon net neutral or carbon zero, and what would be the time frame? So I'm working on a systems design plan right now with some professors here and some of the students on this. And if you want to get involved, you can find me and we can figure this out together to do this. What is really, really important is we looked at these areas: environmental sensing networks, mobility, waste, right? Waste is a big issue everywhere. Wellness, water, what kind of innovation, communications, and energy sustainability. These are all solutions that you end up developing. And it's always a matter of taking research and then turning it into practical applications and proof points and proof of concepts and then larger rollouts that you've seen. This will address, I think, the question that you were talking about. So if I were to look at 2002, this is the area that nothing existed. This was the land. 2017, this is that huge emphasis area that I just showed you. So this is the last video I'm going to show on this part of the presentation here. This is about biodiversity and how to change a barren landscape and actually create a green environment.
At Infosys, we believe whatever we strive to do has to be done with due respect to what surrounds us. Safeguarding nature is a fundamental responsibility to us. That is why we designed our Mangalore campus to be intrinsically green. A decade ago, when we built the campus, we promised to transform the land into a living rainforest. Through rainwater harvesting, we made the water walk through our campus, not run out of it. We planted native trees in ultra-high densities. From an open, exposed black-white landscape, we built the foundation for nature to take its own course. Today, the campus is a home amidst a forest, with trees that are so rare, and wildlife that flourishes like it were a pristine rainforest. The water we worked so hard to preserve returns back. There is enough to flow through our campus and provide for our neighbors. At our Mangalore campus, the respect we show to our surroundings has paid back. Because nature has come to live among us.
So when we engineered the campus, we said this was part of the engineering problem to solve. How to bring the biodiversity environment in. So that environment produces extra carbon credits that can be sold. We as a company do not sell credits. That's by choice. Because for much of the same moral ideas that you have, we just don't think it's accountable. Other companies do. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but that's was the point of why we did that. The last part of this presentation, and then I'll give you some inside views about how this works. So you do it in one place, and then you spread it around the world. You start going to your other campuses, and you take the lessons learned, and we set up a series of living labs that could transfer information. So that now what we're doing in Brazil, or what's happening in North America, we set up 6 campuses there. What we do in Manila, what we do in Australia, we take those lessons learned, but we also give different problem statements because each location has different problems to solve. They may not have great solar access, they may not own the buildings, they have different population densities, but we share information. But every piece of data, those 5,000 points, actually today it's over 2 million points of data come in every second, we can see in one control center through a digital twin, in this case, and we can adjust and look at the model here. Now, it's a great story, and what happens next is very interesting. Before I tell you what I really think is happening now, any idea of how many people, the core team, to enable a program like this is? Not the senior people who are signing the checks or giving permission, but the core team that made this whole problem statement come to reality. Take a guess. How much? 50? Anybody else? It's lower than that. 7 people. 7 people pulled this program together. They were responsible for envisioning it, for putting the plans in place, for being accountable. Now it expanded because then you had engineers and you had partners and all these things, but it was a team of 7 people. And then once it got completed, it grew to a team of 25 people because they had dual responsibilities, not just to maintain what was happening, but also to expand what was coming next. And what I will end this part of the lecture with, because I know we started late, and the other part I really want to be able to get into deeply on here, it goes back to the double materiality question. So, when Infosys did this, they had a clear understanding of 2 things. That one axis, what do we need to do to grow as a company? We're going to grow to a certain size, we're going to have certain revenues, we're going to serve so much of the world in the things that we do. And in this case, we're putting a lot of buildings up, and we are making what we have efficient in energy, and we're changing the landscape, and we're getting to that carbon neutrality. So what happens when you complete that journey? We completed it in 2020. Things have changed. Oh, and by the way, although there was AI, there certainly wasn't AI, like we talked about today. So it really wasn't part of the equation. So almost all of these technologies and all of this value was done using existing technologies and using existing engineering or existing business models. So I never take it as an excuse that things cannot happen because the technology isn't there yet. There are other ways of figuring it out. And then you can employ new technologies as they come across. So if I were to base this entire plan on carbon capture, which doesn't exist yet, I could say it's going to take you to 2050. It's not an excuse. Here's the challenge with what's happening now, though. So once something like an Infosys achieves this, you still have to make the money. So we start to export around the world. Around the world is a different problem set. It's about taking what you've learned and having others do it, and you have to turn it into a business in this case, because that's what Infosys does. So they've lost the vision of double materiality because it's not clear of how that side of the equation for society and climate works for all these other regions and what's those things. So although we stayed carbon neutrality, I'm not with Infosys anymore, I left 2 years ago, once we solved this, they're struggling to say how to have a larger impact and footprint across here. And the lesson I learned is this. you might think you understand the level of materiality in saying, here's my finance, here's what I'm doing for climate. It's not a constant, it's always shifting. Just like every organization says I have new financial goals every year, I might reduce staff, I might have higher profits, I have to change how the world's going. Same thing with climate decisions. What you do for neutrality or what you say with your climate goals are always going to change too, probably every 2 to 3 years. And if you don't adjust for those changes, you will kind of lose your way. And one of the biggest questions that's happening here in India and around the world, as we adopt more artificial intelligence, which I think is a good thing or a bad thing, it's happening, it uses an intense amount of power. And it puts out an intense amount of carbon. So that's a question saying, good for the company, and probably good, it could solve cancer possibly, and other amazing things, but it's going to also increase the carbon footprint. And you have to understand what is that balance by your organization, by your government, and so forth. So it's always a moving target. It becomes almost like a physics problem, that they're not constants. So that's the first part of the presentation that I wanted to present to you. I know we're running late, and I'm sensitive to your next part of the presentation is about 45 minutes. Are we okay with that?
Do you have anything beyond 11? Or we can continue?
Because I can speed it up too. I just need to know. We're good? Let's go. And we'll try to go with it. So, you don't need a break. We're good? Okay, this one's going to